Good morning. It is a little bit earlier today, almost 7:30 UTC on Wednesday, what is it now? The 7th. Wow. Anyways, really nice continuation from the upside. We talked about the bounce on Monday. We talked about the level yesterday for bullish back test for regain and continuation. It's all playing out very, very nicely as we are seeing the same thing as we talked about, which is retail trying to short into the breakdown instead of looking at this local price action, which we've been developing since Monday, being short trappy effectively. Looking at a little bit higher time frame, just to give some perspective, yeah, 54K, obviously, if we start getting some local losses, that should be a target. The majority, I mean, not even just the majority, all of the major longs have been taken out entirely now from the market. Everyone's overly bearish still. Fear is still massive and rampant. I think we hit 17 on the fear and greed index, but that's all good. It's all wildly good if we're looking at a potential bounce here. So it's playing out really nicely. We're not quite regaining really important levels that we want to see above. The local stuff, again, higher time frame doesn't really matter. There's blocks of shorts coming in to try and hold price at every single step up. And all that's doing is fueling the fire back to the upside. The first major liquidity gap above us starts to get around 59K, which would be a big retest of like that previous breakdown structure. So if we do have a continuation move up to 59K, call it 59.4, somewhere in this liquidity gap zone, watch if there's a potential short failure of this high structure to push us back to the downside. But for right now, you've got some priority up. Localized failures would be around 56K. That would force a retest, in my mind, down to 54K and potentially lower. If we do have a bigger sweep into liquidity to the downside, there are some massive higher low longs available still if there's that big breakdown at 51K and potentially lower into that structure. Looking over at the long short ratios, playing out nicely. Love it. We're seeing taker shorts coming in still pretty decently. We talked about this on Monday as well and Tuesday that we're going to see retail start to short into any upside drives. That's what we're getting. This is awesome. Long short ratios coming down, not fast, but it's still coming down, which is good. We're seeing shorts being re-entered. We want shorts to keep building. The more people try to short, the more, generally speaking, retail shorting means that we're getting fuel to keep the drive going to the upside. So looking over at trading light, looking some of the orders, yes, this big block of a couple thousand Bitcoin keeps moving at every single point up. They're also pulling it. So lower time frames, you'll actually see that these orders are being removed, which means in my mind that I think they're fake. They're just holding price in place to try and keep the bounce from exploding to the upside. That being said, there is not a lot of localized levels for support below us. So if there's that localized failure at 56K, I think 55 is at least a level to hold as a target. And if we do break this kind of local structure, since we have some really nice like bullish engulfing candles here on the 4 hour, that would probably force a retest of 54. Stuff starts to break a little bit once we start losing 54K. At least in my mind, that means that we're now having to force the retest down to the low 51K zone. There is definitely still a major long in place in case we have that breakdown to catch that high. Same thing to the upside. If we keep grinding up, there's actually a pretty decent failure like we just saw around around these highs, 59K, potentially a little bit higher, to force price to do a retest. So the grinding up is great. It's trapping shorts. We're seeing that, and we want to have that continuation, but just be aware there's a couple localized failures that would be good for potential shorts to the downside. For right now, you've got pretty decent upside trending price action on 4 hour and even some daily bullish divergence stuff. So it's actually looking very promising. Looking over at the footprint, just to see resting orders. Yeah, we quite a bit of longs that are still in position here. So there's definitely enough liquidity if we do see some localized breakdown, start putting some of these guys out of position. Starting to fail would probably force us to come right back down to lows and really punish some of these late longs potentially. So keep that in mind. But until we see a major breakdown, every level here locally in lower time frame is a potential bounce for higher until you start seeing failures. Yeah, 56K, 55.2. Again, these are all levels to bounce from. But the one that really matters is 54K. If we do fail 54, I am expecting that kind of flush out back down to lows, get everyone super bearish again, and that being like the localized bottom potentially. Looking just to glance real quick at TPO, just we're on that. Again, these line up really nicely, 56K, 54, a little bit higher, 54 too. So again, these are all nice areas to bounce from, these TPOs. And where we'd want to see some type of failure would be kind of like up here, not quite 60K, I think it's a bit high, but somewhere in this structure to break back to the downside. looking over at trading view for the plan. So from yesterday, we talked about that green zone, that continuation move. We got it. It was perfect, lovely. Back test of some swing structure. We didn't even get the full daily open retest, just full send. Still looking at that upside priority. We are creating demand zones, these little blue areas. These are demand zones that are being created on the 1 hour. Still targeting up into those highs. First major resistance or first major profit target was hit and when we hit 57K. We talked about that as well, being like the first major zone where you'd want to see some kind of potential rejection. But you're building support. You got daily bullish divergence. It looks powerful as, you know, everyone else is still calling for lower, which I think is funny. In any case, the higher time frame is definitely, you know, we can still absolutely break down. Obviously, any new lows from the lows we created, we have to target 46 and 42K. It's that simple. But locally, you've got some priority up. Regaining of this structure here is really significant, especially if we just, you know, wick above, you know, break down, and then we start squeezing into the upside. There's a lot of short liquidity that could be eaten up if that's the case. So keep that in mind. So that's yesterday's plan. If I look at what I'm kind of looking at for today, basically it's this. Looking decent. Again, if we start seeing a localized breakout 56K, I want to see some retest this demand. Again, these are all levels that can continue to go to the upside. Obviously, you're still looking for that. But if you get the failure below and then the bearish back test, you want to start targeting lower, potentially down to 54. And the higher time frame play is pretty much the simple version of if we break down very, very hard and fast, we are probably looking at a local bottom. If we then don't create new lows and bullishly regain stuff like 54, 55K, stuff like that. So that's still in play. The higher time frame is technically still down, obviously. So if you have some of these longs, great, continue. You still should be technically net short, but I've been filling spot bags. I think everyone from our team has been doing it as well, just in case we have that major continuation move. So that's that. I'll leave it there and catch you guys tomorrow. Peace.